Welcome to Skytech-Lens. It began not with tanks, but with a pen. On August 1, 2025, President Trump raised tariffs on Canadian goods to a staggering 35%. This was more than an economic move. It was a shockwave across the world's longest undefended border, shattering decades of trust. Trump's rhetoric, dismissing Canada as the 51st state, landed as a deep insult in Ottawa. Canadians, long the quiet neighbor, felt a surge of national pride and resolve. The era of taking the relationship for granted was over. For decades, the two nations built an economic marvel. Auto parts alone crossed the border up to 7 times before a car was finished. Trump's tariffs took a sledgehammer to this delicate machinery, severing invisible lines of commerce worth nearly $850 billion annually. The response from Canada was not immediate, but it was coming. Prime Minister Mark Carney knew a tit-for-tat tariff war would only hurt Canadians. Instead, Canada began crafting a precise, strategic response, one that would make Washington feel the consequences in ways it never expected. The days of quiet acquiescence were over. Canada was preparing to push back, not with fury, but with cold calculation. The friendship was fractured, and a new, uncertain chapter had begun. The world watched as North America's closest partnership teetered on the edge. The shock of betrayal would echo far beyond the border. In crisis, Canada turned to Prime Minister Mark Carney, a master of global finance. Carney's government launched a surgical counter-offensive, targeting American goods that hit U.S. consumers and key political constituencies. Prices at Walmart and for daily staples like coffee rose, making the trade war a kitchen table issue for millions of Americans. Canadians also stopped cross-border trips, devastating Florida's tourism industry. Ottawa then offered a partial tariff rollback on select U.S. goods, signaling a willingness to negotiate. But critical tariffs on U.S. steel, aluminum, and autos stayed, dividing American industries and keeping pressure on Trump's base. Carney's strategy was precise, political, and devastatingly effective. The message: Canada would not be bullied. The trade war forced Canada to rethink its economic destiny. The Great Pivot began, reducing reliance on the U.S. and forging new global trade ties. In just a year, Canada slashed its U.S. export share from 78% to 68%, a monumental shift. Canadian gold found new buyers in the U.K., beef returned to Australian markets, exports to the EU, Mexico, and Japan soared. At home, the Buy Ontario, Choose Canada campaign rallied consumers to support domestic industries. This was more than patriotism. It was economic survival. Canada's two-front strategy: diversify abroad, strengthen at home. The era of automatic US-Canada commerce was over. Canada was building a future no longer tied to Washington's whims. Trump's strategy was escalation: bigger tariffs, louder threats. He suspended tariffs on China while doubling down on Canada, giving Beijing a chance to expand its influence. New tariffs hit India and the EU, creating global instability and uncertainty. The USMCA, once a symbol of North American unity, now hung by a thread. Businesses across the continent were paralyzed, unable to plan for the future. Trump's doctrined trade deals were temporary. Chaos was the new normal. For American families, the trade war meant higher prices on cars, clothes, and everyday goods. The auto sector was hit first, with new vehicles costing thousands more. Retailers like Walmart and Procter & Gamble passed costs to consumers, squeezing household budgets. Border states like Michigan and New York faced layoffs and economic pain. The tariffs, meant to punish Canada, created economic dead zones in the U.S. Even the Federal Reserve warned. The trade war was now a threat to America's economic stability. Canada's trump card was its vast reserves of critical minerals: lithium, cobalt, rare earths, and uranium. These resources are essential for electric vehicles, tech, and defense. As China dominated global supply chains, Canada emerged as the West's best alternative. Ottawa fast-tracked mining and refining, aiming to supply allies directly and bypass both Beijing and Washington's tariffs. The U.S., desperate to reduce reliance on China, now found itself at odds with its most reliable supplier. With American projects years away, Canada's minerals became a powerful geopolitical weapon. The Pentagon faced a stark choice: reconcile with Canada or risk strategic vulnerability. Canada's quiet leverage had become a checkmate. The 2025 trade conflict revealed two starkly different strategies. Trump wielded tariffs like a hammer, seeking dominance through chaos and spectacle. Carney countered with surgical strikes, targeted tariffs, diplomatic gestures, and political pressure. Canada's approach turned American consumers and businesses into its best lobbyists. Trump's zero-sum tactics alienated allies and destabilized markets. Carney's precision exposed the limits of brute force in an interconnected world. In this modern David and Goliath, strategy outmaneuvered strength. The world watched as Canada stood up to the US. Allies like Japan, Germany, and Australia saw their own vulnerabilities reflected in Canada's fight. The Great Pivot became a blueprint for middle powers seeking independence from American dominance. Canada's critical minerals strategy showed that even smaller nations could wield asymmetric power. The trade war accelerated a shift toward a multipolar world, weakening US leverage. New alliances and trade routes emerged, proving a third way was possible. Canada's stand inspired others to rethink their own economic futures. The global order was changing. Canada was leading by example. Beyond economics, the trade war left a deeper scar: broken trust. The US-Canada relationship, once a model of partnership, now felt fragile and conditional. Canadians saw the US as unpredictable. Americans saw Canada as a competitor. Nationalist movements surged and the sense of shared destiny faded. Canada's pivot away from US dependence became permanent policy. The easy friendship of the past may never return. Rebuilding trust will take more than new deals. It will require years of stability and respect. For now, the two nations remain neighbors, but the old bond is a casualty of a trade war that cost far more than money. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates. Thanks.